Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, oh my God. We're gonna tell you two things. Firstly, we're gonna talk about the state and its relation to parents and how this necessarily opposes the role of parents and why it's necessarily bad and blah blah and all that kind of stuff. And secondly, we're gonna talk about how you essentially alienate a huge part of children from the whole social constructs within the kindergarten. Most of my rebuttal are going to be my points, but before that, I have a couple of points of rebuttal that fall outside my substantive material. So firstly, like this, first prop, what this point that democracy, it's equal to no discrimination. I mean, it's not that that's not something that we oppose. We actually agree that democracy is equal to no discrimination. What we oppose is the way you actually fight that not discrimination. We're going to give you more substantive reasoning in my own arguments, why it's necessarily bad, why we shouldn't do that, right? So now moving on to what the extension was. So they brought like this gender neutrality, no neutral pronouns word, and blah blah, and how it develops our moral intuition. Like we can already give you a couple of reasons why it doesn't. Firstly, children have parents, right? And parents actually teach them and indoctrinate them in their own way. So if parents say he and she, and if you don't really tell parents to say those gender neutral pronouns, nothing is gonna change, right? Parents are still gonna use them, and the whole thing loses its whole effectiveness. Right? The second point is, we think that it's not necessarily that words and pronouns that develops your moral intuition. What has a higher impact and what has a much stronger impact upon your moral intuition is the visions and the stuff you see. So even if somebody uses it instead of saying he or she, but they still sees around girls playing with Barbies and boys playing with tractors. We think that it doesn't really affect your moral intuition anyway, but rather just simply the whole gender neutral pronoun just creates confusion and it doesn't work. No thank you. And thirdly, we say that, for example, if you don't teach parents that particular thing, as they are not doing in their class, we think that teachers are going to be making those words even unconsciously, right? Because simply they are used to that. And whenever they say he or she instead of saying it, it's going to be a huge deal and they should feel bad about themselves. So you're necessarily creating this bad discourse that isn't necessarily bad. No, thank you. Right, and they also talked about the fact that it somehow prevents them from doing what they like. No, we say that it's you who prevent them from doing what they like, because you indoctrinate those children upon various things that they should not play with Barbies and they should not play with tractors or whatever they are playing, even if they like. It's you who are telling that it's wrong to do that, and we think that it's you who should who should take responsibility for that. Right, so state, feminist movement, and parents, how the whole thing works. Like, look, firstly, we're gonna tell you that their plan simply does not work and doesn't bring any meaningful change. Like, firstly and foremost, we tell you that the whole indoctrination, that the whole entrenchment of gender roles starts before you enter the kindergarten. It's not the kindergarten teachers who hand you the first toys, but rather it is parents and your families who hand you Barbies or hand you various machines or whatever they are doing there. And we think that they already get to know gender roles before entering kindergartens. And we think that your plan simply does not work. So when they say that children should develop their own perspective about the world, right? We think that you don't really give them that particular thing. You don't really let them to develop that perspective about the world, because you are necessarily indoctrinizing them and entrenching them to live under some specific roles, under some specific set of rules. And you're saying that if they do otherwise, they're doing a wrong thing. If a girl is playing with Barbies, you're telling that it's a wrong thing and they are not supposed to do that. So we think that it either contradicts their whole case, that it actually brings some meaningful change. Right? We think that parents will start opposing such policies because, as they confess, some parents don't like their let's say boys playing with dolls because they think it's gay, right? And we think that there is another issue that parents are going to try to conform, this issue of conformity, and they're going to try to help those children not to play with those toys as the kindergartens are telling them to play. And we think that they're going to start opposing the state and feminist movement as such, because they don't like the idea of making their children look gay in our society. We're not necessarily saying that that's the case. We are saying that that's what society, that most of the society thinks, and that's one of the ways why no thank you, why parents are not gonna like it. We think that parents wouldn't buy into the whole idea of state telling their children how they should think, how they should look, and what kind of tools they are supposed to play with. We think that by doing that, the feminist movement and the state, in terms of feminist movement, loses political capital in a sense that it becomes impossible to change society without changing parents, right? We think that it's simply impossible to do that. And when you try to indoctrinize kids, you lose the support from parents necessarily because you are telling parents that they should, that they are doing a wrong thing, and they're not supposed to teach children in that particular way. So they tell you also, no thank you, that we should eradicate stereotypes. Like, look, we agree that we should eradicate stereotypes. What we are saying necessarily that's not the way of doing that, because you lose the political capital of feminist movement, and you're necessarily gonna not be able, you're not gonna be able to get further change within the adults community, and that's what matters if you're gonna do those weird things, because adults are gonna think the feminist movement are those weird guys that want to indoctrinize my children. Those are the guys who are telling that I'm a bad parent. Please.
Okay, you are saying that parents indoctrinate kids and kids should have their free choice, which is contradictory. Please explain why can't we legitimize the choice of a child not to conform with the gender stereotypes through the idea that we establish an alternative environment to their home?
Right? Like, look, we think that when it comes to state and when it comes to parents, we think that it's parents above the state, how the children should be formed and how the children should be raised. If they believe in some traditional values, if they believe in some gender role, we think that it's parents' role and it's parents' responsibility to raise their children in some particular way as they like, and it's not state's responsibility. We don't believe that the state has such a right. Briefly about the alienation of children. Like, look, children come, as I told you, children come with in the kindergarten with some certain set of beliefs that are predominant before they enter the kindergarten. And when you try to indoctrinize the children, you say that girls shouldn't play with dolls. You're necessarily alienating those children, those girls who are necessarily like to play with dolls and Barbies, right? You alienate, at that particular moment once you do that, you alienate those children who like to play with those particular tools. And you alienate them because you tell them that they shouldn't do that, that what they do is necessarily wrong, and we think that it's not what states should do. Even if you happen to indoctrinize the children, we think that you make it harder for them to enter the normal society whenever they become adults, because that's not the way how society functions, right? Because by that plan, you're not changing how society believes, how society behaves, and how adults think. So it becomes much harder for kids to interact within our society and to make the reasonable decisions, because what you say does not represent the reality. For all those reasons, we are moderately happy.